The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the ancient forest into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Thunder rumbled like the growl of forgotten gods, and the air hung heavy with the scent of wet earth and pine, mingled with something sharper, smoke from a distant fire that shouldn't have been there. Ilara huddled beneath the overhang of a crumbling stone archway, ruins of some long-lost temple swallowed by the wilds. Her fingers, numb and trembling, clutched the frayed edge of her cloak, the fabric soaked through to her skin. She had run for days, maybe weeks, time blurred in the endless grey of the woods. She wasn't supposed to be here. Omegas like her were meant for the warmth of the pack's dens, for serving and submitting, their lives woven into the hierarchy like threads in a tapestry. But Ilara had been cast out, rejected by the Alpha who once claimed her as mate. His words still echoed in her mind, sharp as claws. "You're weak, broken. No place for you among us." The pack had turned their backs, leaving her to the mercy of the borderlands, where rogues and beasts roamed free. Now, alone with the storm, she felt the weight of that rejection like a curse etched into her bones. The fire she had kindled was small, a defiant spark against the downpour, fed by twigs and the last of her scavenged herbs. Its flames danced erratically, casting flickering light on the moss-covered stones around her. Ilara stared into the heart of it, willing the warmth to chase away the chill that went deeper than the rain. Her wolf stirred within her, a restless shadow in her soul, urging her to shift, to run on 4 legs until exhaustion claimed her. But she resisted. Shifting meant vulnerability, meant drawing attention from whatever lurked in these forsaken woods, and attention was the last thing she needed. A twig snapped beyond the fire's glow, sharp and deliberate. Ilara's heart lurched, her breath catching in her throat. She froze, ears straining against the patter of rain. The forest held its breath with her, the wind dying to a hush. Then eyes, glowing amber in the darkness, emerged from the tree line. Not one pair, but several, circling the ruins like ghosts materializing from the mist. Wolves. But not ordinary beasts. Their forms shimmered at the edges, fur rippling with an otherworldly sheen, as if the moonlight pierced the clouds just to touch them. Ilara's instincts screamed to flee, but her body betrayed her, rooted by the fire's meager light. The pack, 5, no, 6 of them, padded closer, silent as shadows, their breaths steaming in the cold air. They were magnificent in their wildness, muscles coiling beneath sleek pelts of black and silver, eyes holding the ancient wisdom of the wild. One stepped forward, larger than the rest, his coat a deep midnight that absorbed the firelight. He lowered his head, sniffing the air, and Ilara swore she saw recognition in his gaze. Not hunger, not threat, but curiosity. Her own wolf whined inside her, a pull she couldn't ignore, like a thread tugging at her core. These weren't rogues, they moved with purpose, a unit bound by something deeper than survival. The Alpha among them shifted then, his form blurring in a haze of mist and magic. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receding to reveal tanned skin, marked by scars that told tales of battles long past. He rose on 2 legs, naked and unashamed, water streaming down his broad shoulders. His hair fell in dark waves to his jaw, and those amber eyes locked onto hers, piercing through the rain like arrows. Who tends a fire in the heart of the whispering woods? His voice was low, resonant, carrying the timbre of thunder wrapped in velvet. He didn't approach further, respecting the boundary of the flames, but his presence filled the space. Commanding without force, Ilara's mouth went dry. She should have been terrified. Strangers in these lands meant danger, packs claiming territory with blood and fang. But there was no malice in his stance, only a quiet intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Someone with nowhere else to go," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. Though every instinct screamed to lower her eyes, he tilted his head, studying her as if she were a puzzle etched in starlight. The other wolves remained in their forms, flanking him like silent guardians, their eyes never leaving her. One, a sleek grey female, let out a soft chuff, almost like a question. The man, Alpha, she knew it in her bones, glanced at her, then back to Elara. "You're no ordinary wanderer. I sent the mark of rejection on you, Omega, the Silver Fang Pack's doing." The name hit her like a slap. How could he know? Her hand instinctively went to her neck, where the faded mate scar throbbed under her fingers, a brand of betrayal. "What do you care?" she shot back, though fear laced her words. "If you're here to finish what they started, get it over with." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, sad and knowing. "We're not hunters of the weak. I'm Kyle, and these are my kin, outcasts like you, bound by choice, not chains." He gestured to the wolves who edged closer, their wariness easing. The grey one shifted too, becoming a woman with sharp features and eyes like storm clouds. She nodded once, silently. Ilara's mind raced. Outcasts. In the world of packs, rejection meant death or madness, wandering alone until the wild claimed you. Yet here they were, a makeshift family forged in the fringes. Her wolf yearned toward them, sensing a kinship she'd lost. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Why tell me this? What's your game?" Kyle's expression darkened, shadows playing across his face as lightning forked the sky. "No game. The woods whisper of change. Eclipses coming, old curses stirring, and Omega's fire draws us like moths. Yours burns brighter than most." He stepped just inside the fire's circle, the heat reflecting in his eyes. Up close, she saw the weight he carried. A faint scar across his chest, glowing faintly like embers under his skin. Alpha mark. No. Something more. Royal, perhaps. From the old tales of the Alpha King, lost to legend. She swallowed, the rain drumming a frantic rhythm on the stones. Part of her wanted to bolt, to vanish into the night. But another part, buried deep, felt seen for the first time since the rejection, not as broken but as necessary. "Elara," she said finally, her voice soft against the storm. "That's my name." "Kyle," he repeated, as if tasting it. The wolves settled around the fire, forming a loose circle, their presence a shield against the encroaching dark. For the first time in moons, the solitude cracked, letting in a sliver of warmth. But as the thunder rolled on, Elara wondered what price this fragile connection would demand, and if the shadows in Kale's eyes hid a destiny that would consume them both. The storm's fury began to wane as the night deepened, the rain softening to a mournful drizzle that pattered against the leaves like forgotten tears. The fire crackled steadily now, its flames leaping higher as the pack added branches from the underbrush, their movements silent and efficient. Elara sat cross-legged on the damp stone, her back against the archway's curve, feeling the warmth seep into her bones for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The wolves, some still in their beast forms, others shifted to human, formed a loose semicircle around the blaze, their eyes reflecting the fire's glow like scattered embers. Kyle remained closest to her, his posture relaxed yet alert, as if the forest itself listened to their words. He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night. "Elara," he said again, the name rolling off his tongue like a secret shared with the wind. "It suits you. Strong, like the roots that hold these ruins together." His amber eyes met hers briefly, then flicked away, giving her space in the intimacy of the moment. She wrapped her arms around her knees, the cloak heavy with moisture, but no longer a barrier against the chill. The grey female, Lyra, she'd introduced herself with a nod and a faint smile, passed Elara a strip of dried meat from a pouch at her waist. It was tough, flavoured with wild herbs, but Elara accepted it gratefully, the simple act of sharing stirring something raw in her chest. "How many?" she asked, her voice barely above the fire's pop. How many like me have you found out here? Kyle's jaw tightened, the scar on his chest catching the light, pulsing faintly as if alive with old memories. Enough to know the pack's cruelty runs deeper than blood. Omegas cast aside for a whisper of weakness, alphas who rule with iron and fear. He paused, his gaze drifting to the tree line where shadows danced. My kin here. We're the remnants. Lyra lost her litter to a border raid. Thorn, he nodded to a burly man with a pelt of russet hair still in wolf form, curling up nearby, challenged his alpha and paid with exile. We don't seek to rebuild what's broken, we survive what's left. Ilara chewed slowly, the meat sticking in her throat. Survival. It was a word she'd clung to like a lifeline, but it tasted bitter now, laced with the ache of what she'd lost. Her mate, former mate, hadn't just rejected her, he'd stripped her of purpose, leaving her wolf fractured, howling in the quiet hours. The Silver Fangs. They said I was tainted, that my heat came too late, my submission too fierce, like I was a storm they couldn't tame. The words spilled out unbidden, vulnerability cracking her voice. She hadn't meant to share, but the fire's warmth coaxed truths from her, and Kyle's steady presence made silence feel like surrender. Lyra leaned forward, her storm cloud eyes softening. Tainted. That's what they call strength, they fear. I've seen Omegas like you bend packs to their will without a word. It's not weakness, it's the thread that holds the weave. She glanced at Kale, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them, then settled back, her hand absently stroking Thorn's fur. Kale's expression darkened, shadows etching lines around his mouth. He set the stick aside and leaned closer, the heat of his body mingling with the fires. The Silver Fangs aren't just cruel, they're blind. Whispers from the old groves speak of an eclipse moon rising, one that awakens the ancient blood, curses long buried, transformations that twist the soul. Your fire. It called to us because it burns with that same wild spark. Rejected or not, you're part of it. Ilara's wolf stirred again, a low thrum in her veins, responding to his words like a key turning in a lock. She felt it. The pull, magnetic and dangerous, drawing her toward him, but doubt clawed at her edges. And you? What's your story, Kale? You speak like a leader, but out here in the fringes, with scars that glow like forbidden magic. Her eyes traced the mark on his chest, an intricate pattern of runes that seemed to shift under her gaze, whispering of thrones and fallen kings. He hesitated, the firelight carving hollows in his cheeks. For a moment, the alpha in him surfaced, a quiet command that made the air thicken. Then it softened, replaced by a weariness that tugged at her heart. I was born to rule, not wander. The alpha king of the elder packs, they called me once, before betrayal turned my crown to ash. His voice dropped, roughened by memory. A curse from a rival alpha, woven into my blood during the last great war. It binds my shifts to the moon's phases, makes me stronger but hungrier. I left my throne to protect my people from what I might become. Now we roam, guardians of the forgotten edges. The pack murmured softly. Affirmations from those in human form, a whine from Thorn. Ilara's breath caught. The Alpha King, legends spoke of him as a force of nature, a wolf who united the realms under a banner of fierce loyalty. To see him here, scarred and shadowed, humanized the myth, made it ache. Why tell me, an outcast Omega with nothing to offer? Kyle's eyes locked onto hers, intense and unyielding. Because the eclipse calls for more than kings and warriors. It needs hearts like yours, ones that endure the breaking. He reached out, not touching, but close enough that she felt the warmth of his skin. Her pulse raced, a forbidden spark igniting low in her belly, her wolf urging her forward. But fear held her back. Trust had betrayed her once, left her hollow. Before she could respond, a distant howl pierced the night. not the wild cry of a lone beast, but a chorus, organized and closing in. The pack tensed, ears pricking, bodies shifting instinctively toward wolf forms. Lyra's hand went to a hidden dagger at her belt, her face hardening. "Silver fangs," she growled. "They've caught our scent." Kyle rose fluidly, his form rippling with restrained power. "Stay by the fire, Elara. We'll hold them off." But as he turned, his eyes met hers one last time, a promise in their depths, protection perhaps more. The drizzle turned cold again, the forest awakening with menace, and Elara felt the fragile warmth shatter. Her wolf howled within, ready to fight, to claim this newfound pack. Yet as the howls grew nearer, she wondered if joining them meant salvation, or dragging them into her own cursed storm. The fire flickered, casting long shadows that danced like omens on the ruin's walls. The howls sliced through the night like knives, echoing off the ancient trees and bouncing from the ruined stones, a symphony of pursuit that set Ilara's teeth on edge. The pack moved as one, a fluid ripple of muscle and shadow, Kale at the forefront, his body already half-shifted, fur sprouting along his arms and shoulders in jagged bursts. The scar on his chest glowed brighter now, a crimson pulse that lit the drizzle like veins of fire beneath his skin. Ilara scrambled to her feet, the fire's heat forgotten as adrenaline surged through her, her wolf clawing at the cage of her human form, demanding release. "Stay back!" Kyle growled again, his voice distorting with the change, eyes flashing gold in the dim light. But she wouldn't, cower like the weak thing her old pack had branded her. The Silverfang's scent hit her then, acrid and familiar, laced with the metallic tang of aggression and old grudges. They were her nightmares, made flesh, the enforcers who had dragged her from the den, their alpha's commands ringing in her ears like judgment. Lyra shifted seamlessly, her lithe form exploding into grey fur and bared fangs, a snarl ripping from her throat as she flanked Kale. Thorn followed, his massive russet bulk shaking the ground as he positioned himself between the ruins and the approaching threat. The other wolves, 3 more, shadows in the mist, fanned out, their eyes locked on the tree line, where branches snapped under heavy paws. Ilara's heart hammered, a wild drumbeat syncing with the distant thunder. She grabbed a fallen branch from the fire's edge, its end charred and smouldering, a makeshift weapon that felt laughably small against the storm brewing. The first Silverfangs burst from the underbrush, sleek and silver-pelted, their coats gleaming unnaturally in the faint moonlight breaking through the clouds. There were 8, no 10, led by a massive brute with a notched ear and eyes like chipped ice. He skidded to a halt at the sight of Kale's pack, hackles rising, a guttural bark summoning the others to circle. "The rogue king and his strays," the leader snarled, shifting mid-stride into a towering man, his chest bare and marked with the Silverfang crest, a snarling wolf etched in ritual scars. "And what's this? Our little lost Omega, playing house with outcasts." Ilara's blood ran cold, but rage ignited in her core, hotter than the dying fire. "Traxis," she whispered, recognizing the enforcer who had held her down during the rejection rite, his claws drawing the first blood from her neck. He laughed, a sound like grinding stones, stepping forward with predatory grace. Kyle intercepted him, his shift completing in a blur of agony and power, bones cracking like thunder as he became the midnight wolf, larger than any Ilara had seen, his fur absorbing the shadows. He lunged without a word, jaws snapping inches from Traxis's throat. The Silverfang Alpha shifted too, meeting him in a clash of fangs and fury, their bodies tumbling into the undergrowth in a whirlwind of snarls and blood-scented mist. The battle erupted around them, chaos unfolding in the ruins like a ritual of the old gods. Lyra darted low, her grey form weaving through the fray to sink teeth into a Silverfang's flank, drawing a yelp that echoed into the night. Thorn barreled into 2 attackers at once, his bulk a living battering ram, rolling them into the mud where they thrashed and bit. Ilara backed against the archway, branch raised, her breath coming in sharp gasps. A young silverfang, barely more than a yearling, his pelt patchy with youth, broke through the line, eyes wild with the thrill of the hunt, lunging straight for her. Time slowed, the world narrowing to the glint of his teeth and the rain-slicked stones underfoot. You feel it then, that surge deep in your gut, the Omega's fire they mocked, now roaring to life. Ilara swung the branch with all her might, the charred end connecting with his muzzle in a crack of wood and bone. He staggered, whining, but recovered fast, circling her with a limp. Her wolf howled inside, the pull too strong to ignore. She dropped the branch, letting the shift take her, pain lancing through her limbs as fur bloomed white and silver across her skin, her body contorting into the sleek form of her inner beast. For the first time since the rejection, the change felt right, not a curse but a reclamation. She met the yearling's charge head-on, her smaller frame dodging his clumsy swipe, then countering with a bite to his shoulder that tasted of copper and victory. He yelped and fled back into the trees, tail tucked, leaving her panting amid the skirmish. The pack fought with a harmony born of desperation, each move a testament to their bond. But the Silverfangs pressed, their numbers giving them an edge, driven by the Alpha's bellowed commands. Traxis and Kyle broke from the underbrush, both bloodied. Kyle's side torn open, dark fur matted, but his eyes burned with unyielding ferocity. He drove Traxis back toward the ruins, pinning him against a mossy pillar with a savage shake that cracked stone. Ilara shifted back, collapsing to her knees as exhaustion clawed at her, the white wolf's strength ebbing into human frailty. She crawled toward the fire's remnants, embers glowing like dying stars, and snatched a handful of heated stones, hurling one at a silverfang harrying Lyra. It struck true, scorching fur and eliciting a retreat. "Enough!" she screamed, her voice raw, carrying over the din. "This isn't your fight, it's mine." Traxis twisted free, shifting to human form, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. "You dare, Omega. You're nothing." Kyle's wolf form loomed over him, a low growl rumbling like the earth itself. The curse mark on his chest, visible even in beast shape, flared, sending tendrils of shadow magic snaking through the air, wrapping around Traxis like chains. The Silverfang Alpha gasped, struggling, his eyes widening in recognition. The king. Impossible. The curse should have... "It endures," Kale snarled, shifting back just enough to speak, his voice a hybrid thunder. "And so do I. Take your pack and go. Tell your alphas the fringes are no longer empty." The magic tightened, forcing Traxis to his knees, the other Silverfangs faltering, their aggression crumbling under the weight of ancient power. Whimpers spread through their ranks as they backed away, Traxis rising unsteadily, spitting blood. This isn't over. The eclipse comes. The old blood will spill. He shot Ilara a venomous glare, then melted into the shadows with his kin, their howls fading into the distance like retreating thunder. Silence fell, broken only by the pack's labored breaths and the soft patter of rain. Kyle collapsed beside the fire, his wound knitting slowly under the curse's glow, a hiss escaping his lips. Lyra limped over, nuzzling his side before shifting fully, her hands pressing a poultice of leaves to the gash. Thorn and the others gathered, licking wounds, their forms a weary circle of fur and flesh. Ilara reached for Kyle, her fingers trembling as they brushed his arm, the contact sending sparks through her skin. You're really him, the Alpha King." The words hung heavy, laced with awe and fear. His eyes met hers, softened by pain, but holding that same magnetic pull. "And you're more than they ever saw," he murmured, his hand covering hers, warm despite the chill. The touch lingered, a quiet promise amid the ruins, as the first hints of dawn pierced the canopy, painting the world in fragile gold. But in the quiet, Ilara felt the eclipse's shadow lengthening, binding their fates in ways she couldn't yet fathom. A king's curse, an Omega's fire, and a pack on the edge of something unbreakable. The forest sighed around them, secrets whispering in the leaves, as the weight of what was to come settled like mist on their souls. Dawn's fragile light filtered through the canopy, turning the ruins into a mosaic of gold and shadow, where dew-kissed stones gleamed like forgotten jewels. The air carried the sharp tang of blood and wet fur, mingling with the earthy scent of healing herbs Lyra crushed between her fingers. Ilara knelt beside Kael, her hands steady now as she helped press the poultice to his wound, the gash knitting under the curse's eerie glow, a slow weave of crimson threads pulling flesh together. His breath came in ragged bursts, but his eyes held hers, steady as the ancient oaks surrounding them, speaking volumes in their amber depths. The pack settled into a wary quiet, bodies shifting between forms as injuries demanded attention. Thorn, back in human shape, his russet beard matted with mud, dragged fallen branches to rekindle the fire, sparks leaping like defiant stars against the paling night. The other wolves, Soren, a lean, black-furred male with a limp, and Mira, a silver she-wolf with eyes like polished obsidian, patrolled the perimeter, their ears twitching at every rustle in the underbrush. The Silverfangs were gone, but their howls lingered in the air like a promise of return, a venomous echo that coiled in Ilara's gut. "You're safe," Kyle murmured, his voice roughened by pain, yet laced with that velvet thunder that made her wolf stir. He shifted slightly, wincing as the scar on his chest flared brighter, runes twisting like living smoke. His hand lingered over hers, calloused fingers tracing the back of her knuckles, a touch that sent warmth blooming through her chilled skin. It was more than comfort. It was a tether, pulling at the frayed edges of her soul, where rejection had left scars deeper than any claw. Ilara pulled back gently, though every instinct screamed to lean in, to let the Alpha's presence wrap around her like the forest's embrace. "Safe, with you bleeding from a fight I brought to your door." Her voice cracked, guilt twisting like thorns in her chest. The battle had awakened something in her, the white wolf's ferocity, long suppressed, but it had cost them. Kael's side would heal, but the strain on his curse. She saw it in the shadows under his eyes, the way his shifts came slower now, as if the magic fed on his strength. Lyra approached, wiping her hands on her tattered tunic, her storm-cloud gaze assessing Ilara with a mix of approval and caution. "You fought like one of us, Omega. That yearling won't forget your bite." She tossed a waterskin to Ilara, the gesture simple but binding, like threads weaving her into their circle. "Rest. The eclipse draws near. 2 nights from now, it'll stir the old blood, make the curses howl louder." Kyle nodded, pushing himself to sit against the archway, his midnight hair falling across his forehead like a veil. "The whispering woods know it. The trees lean heavier, the winds carry omens." He glanced at the canopy, where leaves rustled without breeze, whispering secrets in a tongue older than Pax. Ilara followed his gaze, feeling the forest's pulse sync with her own, a low thrum that vibrated in her bones, calling to the Omega fire they'd spoken of by the flames. As the sun climbed, painting the ruins in warmer hues, the pack shared a meager meal, roots dug from the soft earth, berries tart with the wild's bite, and the last of their dried venison. Stories flowed like the stream nearby, soft voices weaving tales of lost homes and hard-won freedoms. Soren spoke of his escape from a northern clan, where alphas culled the weak under the guise of purity. Mira, shifting to human with a graceful shudder, recounted her lone wanderings until Kyle's howl had drawn her in. Each word built the pack's invisible walls higher, a fortress of shared pain that Ilara found herself slipping into, her laughter surprising her when Thorn mimicked a pompous alpha's strut. But as midday waned, the idyll fractured. Kyle rose abruptly, his face paling as the curse mark pulsed erratically, shadows coiling from it like smoke from a hidden blaze. He staggered, clutching his chest, a growl escaping his lips, half pain, half fury. Ilara was at his side in an instant, her arm around his waist, feeling the tremor in his frame. "Kale, what is it?" "The eclipse's whisper," he grated out, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool air. "It hungers early, pulls at the beast within." His eyes flickered, amber turning feral gold, pupils dilating as the wolf clawed to the surface. The pack tensed, Lyra drawing her dagger, Thorn positioning himself as a barrier. Ilara's heart raced. She'd seen shifts before, violent in rage or rut, but this was different, twisted, the curse weaving agony into every change. He dropped to his knees, body convulsing, fur erupting in patches that receded just as quickly, leaving skin raw and scored. A roar tore from his throat, echoing through the ruins, shaking loose pebbles from the archway. Ilara held on, ignoring the burn of his claws digging into her arm, her wolf responding with a soothing whine only he could hear. "Fight it," she urged, her voice an anchor in the storm. "You're more than the curse." Memories flooded her then, unbidden, her own rejection rite, the Alpha's blade, carving the mate mark only to slash it away, declaring her broken. The pain had been a fire then, consuming her from within, but she'd endured, letting it forge her rather than shatter. Now, facing Kale's torment, she channeled that resilience, pressing her forehead to his, sharing her warmth. "Let me help. Share the burden." The pack watched, breaths held, as the shadows around Kale thickened, forming ethereal chains that bound his limbs. But slowly, impossibly, the glow dimmed, the convulsions easing. He gasped, collapsing against her, human once more, his breathing ragged but controlled. The scar's light faded to a dull ember, and for a moment silence reigned, broken only by the distant call of a raven. Kyle lifted his head, eyes clearing to meet hers, gratitude and something deeper, longing mirroring in their depths. "How?" he whispered, his hand cupping her cheek, thumb brushing a tear she hadn't known she'd shed. "Your fire," Lyra said softly, sheathing her blade, the tension breaking like dawn's first light. "It tempers the curse. The legend spoke of an Omega's light balancing the king's shadow." Ilara shook her head, the weight of destiny pressing down, heavy as the ruin's stones. Love impossible flickered in her chest. A pull toward this scarred king, born of shared exile, but laced with peril. The eclipse loomed, promising transformation, but at what cost? As the pack gathered closer, their warmth a shield against the gathering clouds, Ilara felt the forest's whispers grow insistent, urging her toward a path of sacrifice. Kale's gaze held hers, a silent vow amid the melancholy beauty of the woods, where hope bloomed fragile as wildflowers in the shadow of coming storm. The day stretched on, but in her heart, the night's trials had only just begun, binding her fate to his, in ways that would test the very soul of the wild. The sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows across the ruins like fingers reaching from the earth's forgotten heart. The air thickened with the scent of damp moss and smouldering embers. The pack's fire rebuilt into a steady beacon that pushed back the encroaching dusk. Ilara sat apart from the others, her back against a vine-choked pillar, knees drawn to her chest as she watched the flames lick at the wood. The day's revelations clung to her like the dew on her skin. Kyle's curse, her unexpected role in easing it, the way his touch had ignited a spark she dared not name. Her wolf paced within, restless, drawn to him in ways that terrified her. Love in the wilds was a fragile thing, easily torn by fangs or fate. Kyle moved among the pack with quiet authority, his wound bandaged in strips of cloth torn from spare tunics, the curse's glow subdued but ever present, a faint pulse under the wrappings. He spoke in low tones to Lyra and Thorn, planning their next steps as the eclipse loomed, just one night away now. The forest seemed to hold its breath, leaves whispering warnings in the breeze. Birds falling silent as if the world anticipated the moon's dark embrace. Ilara felt it too, a pressure building in her veins, her omega fire flickering hotter, urging her towards something inevitable. As twilight bled into the sky, painting it in bruised purples and golds, Kyle approached her, his steps soft on the leaf-strewn ground. He lowered himself beside her, close enough that the heat of his body chased away the evening chill, but not so close as to crowd her space. "You carry the weight of the day like a shadow," he said, his voice a gentle rumble, eyes tracing the lines of exhaustion on her face. "Talk to me, Ilara. The silence between us grows thorns." She met his gaze, those amber depths pulling at her like the tide. Vulnerability warred with caution in her chest. The rejection from her old pack had taught her that trust was a blade that could turn inward. "It's all too much," she admitted, her fingers twisting the hem of her cloak. "One moment I'm alone, running from ghosts. The next I'm this, part of your curse, your pack. What if my fire isn't enough? What if I break us all when the eclipse comes?" Kale's hand hovered near hers, then settled lightly on her knee, a grounding touch that sent warmth spiraling through her. "You've already mended what others couldn't. The legends of the Alpha King speak of a balancing light, an omega unbound by chains, whose essence tempers the shadow." He paused, his thumb tracing idle circles on her skin, each one a spark against the melancholy settling over her. "I never believed them until you, but it's not just the curse. It's you, Ilara. You've awakened something in me beyond the beast." Her breath hitched, the air between them charged, heavy with unspoken longing. She leaned closer, drawn by the scent of him, pine and earth and a hint of wild smoke, her wolf whining softly in approval. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the curve of his lips, the scar on his chest rising and falling with his breath. Then, a distant rumble shook the ground, not thunder, but something deeper, like the earth's bones shifting. The pack stirred, heads lifting, ears pricking as the ruins trembled faintly, dust sifting from the archway above. "What was that?" Ilara whispered, pulling back, her hand instinctively finding his arm. Kale's face hardened, the alpha surfacing in the set of his jaw. The old blood stirring. The eclipse pulls at the roots of these woods, ancient pacts, curses woven into the land itself. He rose, helping her to her feet, their fingers lingering in a tangle. The pack gathered, forms shifting restlessly, eyes scanning the tree line, where shadows lengthened unnaturally, twisting like living things. Lyra stepped forward, her dagger glinting in the firelight. "The whispering woods guard secrets. If the eclipse awakens them, we need to move, find higher ground before the shadows claim the lowlands." Thorn nodded, his burly frame tense, while Soren and Mira scouted ahead, their wolf forms melting into the dusk with low growls. As they broke camp, packing meager supplies into hide satchels, Ilara felt the pull intensify, a magnetic tug toward the heart of the forest. Visions flickered at the edges of her mind. Flashes of silver moonlight bathing ruins in blood-red hues, wolves howling in unison under a blackened sky. Kale's form twisting in agony as shadows consumed him. She stumbled, catching herself on a tree trunk, bark rough under her palms. "You see it now, the destiny uncoiling like a serpent in your blood, demanding sacrifice for the light to endure." Kyle was there in an instant, steadying her, his concern etching deeper lines across his brow. "Ilara, the fire, does it burn too hot?" She shook her head, pressing a hand to her temple where the visions throbbed. "It's showing me. Pieces. The eclipse won't just curse you, it'll unravel everything. The packs, the wilds, unless—" Her voice trailed off, the weight of it crushing. "Unless she gave herself fully, bound her essence to his, a union that could shatter her old scars but forge new ones." They pressed on through the gathering night, the path winding upward toward a ridge overlooking the valley, moonlight filtering through the canopy in silvery shafts. The pack moved in tight formation, senses alert, the air humming with tension. Halfway up, the ground split with a crack, a fissure yawning open like a wound in the earth, releasing a gust of fetid wind carrying whispers, names, pleas, echoes of long-dead ancestors. Thorn leaped it easily, but Ilara hesitated, the chasm pulling at her with unnatural force. Kale shifted partially, his arm transforming into a clawed limb that he extended to her. "Jump to me. I won't let you fall." She did, launching across the gap, her body colliding with his in a rush of fur and muscle. They tumbled to the other side, breathless, his wolf form nuzzling her neck in reassurance before he shifted back. The contact lingered, her cheek against his chest, heartbeat syncing with his, a rhythm of sacrifice and unspoken vows. "I see you, Kyle," she murmured, "the king beneath the curse, and I choose this. Us." His eyes softened, a rare smile breaking through the shadows. "Then we face the eclipse together." Dum. But as they crested the ridge, the valley below revealed a sight that chilled her. Distant fires dotting the horizon, silver fang banners fluttering in the wind, armies massing under the rising moon. The eclipse's edge nibbled at the sky, a dark bite promising chaos. Ilara's fire flared in response, illuminating the pack's path, but doubt gnawed at her. Could her light truly redeem a fallen king, or would it consume them in its blaze? The night deepened, stars winking out one by one as the forest's ancient heart beat faster, drawing them toward a transformation etched in blood and starlight. The ridge's edge crumbled under their boots like brittle bones, sending pebbles skittering into the yawning valley below. The moon hung swollen and ominous, its silver light fractured by the eclipse's creeping shadow, turning the world into a tapestry of ink and ember. Fires blazed across the distant plain, hundreds of them, pinpricks of rage from the Silverfang legions, their banners snapping like whips in the wind. Howls rose in ragged chorus, a tide of fury crashing against the night, drawn by the eclipse's siren call. Ilara's skin prickled, her omega fire coiling tight in her chest, a living flame that both warmed and warned. Kyle stood at her side, his silhouette etched against the darkening sky, the curse mark on his chest throbbing like a second heartbeat beneath his bandages. The pack clustered behind them, forms tense and watchful, Lyra's grey eyes scanning the horizon, Thorn's massive frame a bulwark of quiet strength, Soren and Mira flanking the rear, with low growls rumbling in their throats. The air hummed with the forest's unrest, branches creaking without wind, the ground pulsing faintly as if the earth itself anticipated the unraveling. "They're coming for the old blood," Kyle said, his voice a low thunder that vibrated through her. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a tether, pulling at the frayed threads of her resolve. The eclipse will shatter the veils, curses unbound, powers awakened. The Silverfangs think to claim it, to forge an empire from the chaos. But if the king's shadow falls unchecked... He trailed off, his jaw clenching, amber eyes reflecting the encroaching dark. Ilara's wolf whined within, sensing the storm in his words, the weight of destiny pressing down like the moon's inexorable pull. She stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his, the contact igniting sparks that danced along her nerves. "And my fire? Is it enough to hold the shadow?" Doubt laced her question, sharp as the chill wind whipping through the trees. The visions from earlier clawed at her mind. Kyle lost to the beast. The pack scattered like leaves in a gale. Her own light snuffed out in sacrifice. Love had bloomed unbidden between them, tender and fierce, but it felt like a blade balanced on its edge, ready to cut deep. He turned to her then, his hand rising to cup her face, thumb tracing the curve of her jaw with a gentleness that belied the Alpha's power. "It's more than enough. You've already pulled me from the abyss once. Together we balance the wild." His gaze held hers, intense and unguarded, stripping away the king's armor to reveal the man beneath. Scarred, weary, yet burning with a hope she'd kindled. For a moment the armies below faded, the eclipse's shadow retreating, and it was just them, two outcasts forging something unbreakable amid the ruins of their pasts. But the moment shattered as the ground shuddered again, stronger this time, a deep groan rising from the valley like the waking of some ancient leviathan. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ridge, forcing the pack to leap back, stones tumbling into the void. From the fissure nearest them, shadows poured forth, not mere darkness, but writhing tendrils of midnight essence, coiling like serpents born of the curse's hunger. They lashed out, seeking flesh, and Soren yelped as one grazed his flank, drawing a line of sizzling black ichor that smoked against his fur. "Form up!" Kyle roared, shifting in a blur of agony and resolve, his midnight wolf form erupting with a snarl that echoed across the valley. The pack followed, bodies twisting into beasts of fang and fury, Lyra's sleek grey darting to intercept a tendril, Thorn's russet bulk slamming into another with bone-crunching force. Mira and Soren circled, nipping at the edges, their howls a defiant symphony against the encroaching night. Ilara felt the pull then, her fire surging in response, a radiant heat that bloomed from her core and spilled outward. You stand at the precipice, the Omega's light clashing with the shadow's grasp, every beat of your heart a battle cry. She didn't shift, not yet, but let the essence flow, her hands outstretched, white silver glow weaving through the air like threads of dawn. The tendrils recoiled from her touch, hissing as they dissolved into wisps, the pack's wounds knitting faintly under the light's caress. Kyle fought at the heart of it, his massive form a whirlwind of claws and teeth, the curse amplifying his strength even as it tore at him. Shadows clung to his pelt, urging the beast deeper, but Ilara's fire reached him, a soothing balm that steadied his strikes. One tendril wrapped his leg, dragging him toward the fisher's maw, and she lunged forward, her glow flaring brighter, severing the bond with a crackle like lightning. He broke free, bounding to her side, nuzzling her hand in wolfish gratitude before turning back to the fray. The assault waned as the eclipse deepened, the moon's disk half devoured, casting the valley in an eerie twilight where Silverfang fires twisted into grotesque shapes. The shadows retreated into the earth, leaving the ridge scarred and silent, the pack panting amid the debris. Kyle shifted back, collapsing against a boulder, his chest heaving, the curse mark blazing like a forger's heart. Blood trickled from fresh gashes, but his eyes found hers, fierce with triumph and something softer, adoration, raw and unfiltered. "You saved us," Lyra said, shifting to human and clapping Ilara's shoulder. Her touch sisterly now, the walls of doubt crumbled. Thorn rumbled approval, while Mira licked Soren's wound clean, their bond a quiet anchor in the storm. Ilara knelt beside Kyle, her fingers threading through his hair, damp with sweat and mist. "We saved each other." The words carried the weight of vows unspoken, her wolf settling into a contented hum, the fire steady now, a beacon against the night. But as the eclipse's shadow crept further, the valley stirred anew. Silverfang scouts breaking from the tree line below, eyes glinting with malice, drawn by the clash of light and dark. Kyle pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear. "One more night, then the full unveiling. Whatever it demands, we'll face it. Together." His lips brushed her temple, a tender promise amid the violence, stirring an ache of longing that twisted with fear. The pack gathered around them, a circle of fur and flesh against the encroaching horde, the forest's whispers rising to a crescendo of fate. Ilara felt the transformation stirring, a loss looming on the horizon, something vital to yield for the light to endure. As the moon bled into shadow, Hope flickered fragile in her chest, a flame destined to either redeem or ravage the wild heart of the king she now claimed as her own. The night pressed on, heavy with the scent of rain and reckoning, binding their souls in the eclipse's merciless gaze. The eclipse devoured the moon whole, plunging the valley into a void where stars fled and the world held its breath. Shadows bled from every crevice, twisting into colossal forms, nightmarish wolves woven from the curse's essence, their eyes pits of endless hunger. The Silverfang horde surged upward from the plain, a sea of silver pelts and bared fangs, Traxis at their helm, his roar a challenge that split the night. Torches flared in their ranks, casting hellish glows that danced like demons on the ridge's fractured edge. Ilara's fire roared within her, a supernova against the dark, illuminating the pack's defiant circle. Kyle stood tall beside her, his body rippling with the curse's torment, fur sprouting and receding in waves of agony. The mark on his chest blazed, shadows coiling from it like lovers turned traitors, urging him toward the beast that could unmake them all. "Stay with me," he growled, his voice fracturing, hand gripping hers with desperate strength. The touch anchored her, their bond a fragile thread amid the chaos. Love's impossible bloom now the only light piercing his storm. The pack shifted as one, a symphony of snarls and cracking bones, Lyra's grey form darting like lightning, Thorn's russet bulk a thunderclap against the tide. Soren and Mira flanked the sides, their howls weaving a barrier of sound that made the shadows hesitate. But the horde crashed against them, Silverfangs leaping the fissures with feral grace, claws raking fur and flesh. Blood scented the air, sharp and metallic, mingling with the ozone tang of unraveling magic. Ilara released Kale's hand, her wolf surging forward, white-silver pelt erupting as she joined the fray. She moved like flame given form, dodging a Silverfang's lunge and countering with jaws that sank into shoulder, tasting the bitterness of old betrayals. Traxis barreled through the melee, his ice-blue eyes locking on her, a snarl twisting his maw. "You'll burn out, Omega. Your light's no match for the king's fall." He shifted mid-charge, massive silver wolf colliding with Kyle in the explosion of fur and fury, rolling toward the ridge's crumbling lip. The curse fed on the clash, shadows exploding from Kale's form, wrapping Traxis in chains of night that drew agonized howls from both. Kyle's midnight beast thrashed, eyes turning feral black, the Alpha King slipping into the monster the legends feared. Ilara's heart tore, the bond pulling her toward him like a noose. She broke from her fight, Lyra covering her with a fierce snap at a pursuing foe, and leaped into the tangle. Her light flared, tendrils of silver weaving into the shadows, clashing in bursts of steam and crackling energy. Pain lanced through her as the curse lashed back, shadows coiling around her limbs, siphoning her fire drop by drop. Visions assaulted her, the rejection rite's blade, her mate's cold dismissal, the endless run through rain-lashed woods. But deeper, she saw Kyle's truth, the throne's weight, the war that birthed his curse, the loneliness of a king who led by sacrificing his soul. You feel it now, the core of your light, the Omega's unyielding heart that no rejection could extinguish. To save him, she'd lose it, the wild spark that defined her, the fire that had drawn them together by that first humble blaze. With a cry that echoed like shattering glass, Ilara poured everything into the bond, her essence flooding Kale's veins. The shadows screamed, recoiling as light and dark fused in a cataclysmic blaze. Traxis broke free, whimpering, his form shrinking as the curse's backlash hurled him down the ridge, tumbling into his horde's midst. The Silverfangs faltered, howls turning to panicked yips, the ancient fear of the king's true power rippling through them. They retreated, banners trailing like broken promises, swallowed by the valley's maw. Kyle collapsed, the midnight wolf shuddering back to human, his chest heaving, the scar's glow fading to a soft, steady ember. No longer a curse, but a balanced mark of rebirth. Shadows lingered at the edges, but they bowed now, tamed whispers rather than raging storms. The eclipse's shadow began to retreat, the moon reclaiming its light in slow, silver arcs, bathing the ridge in ethereal glow. Ilara fell beside him, her body spent, the fire within dimmed to a quiet ember. Exhaustion claimed her limbs, a hollow ache where her wild spark had burned brightest. She'd given the untamed part of herself, the fierce independence that let her survive alone, but in its place bloomed something deeper, a shared soul woven with his. Her wolf curled content, no longer fractured, but whole in their union. The pack gathered, shifting back to human forms, wounds knitting under the returning moonlight. Lyra knelt first, her hand on Ilara's shoulder, eyes shining with unshed tears. "You did it, sister. The light endures." Thorn rumbled a soft laugh, clapping Kale's back gently, while Soren and Mira nuzzled close, their whines a chorus of gratitude. Kyle pulled Ilara into his arms, cradling her against his chest, his heartbeat a steady drum against her ear. "You saved me," he whispered, voice thick with emotion, fingers tracing the faint new scar on her palm. A silvery line where light had met shadow, a symbol of sacrifice and strength. No words for the love that bound them now, impossible no more, but forged in fire and fang. His lips brushed her forehead, a final gesture of vow, as dawn's first rays pierced the horizon, painting the valley in gold and promise. The forest sighed, leaves rustling in approval, the ancient woods awakening to a new balance. Ilara met Kyle's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them, redemption not in crowns or packs unchallenged, but in the quiet power of hearts reclaimed. The Silverfangs would regroup, threats would whisper from the edges, but here, on the ridge's scarred heights, a king and his Omega stood unbroken, their light a beacon for the wild's weary. As the sun rose, hope unfurled like wildflowers through cracked stone, a renascent dawn for the outcasts who had found their fire in each other.